G'day viewers, welcome to this week's PB's Retro Restorations. This week I'm doing the Matchbox Lesney 15C Tippax refuse collector, or garbage truck if you prefer. This one came to me via my father-in-law Paul. You've heard me talk about Paul many times. He's old school Matchbox, regular wheels preferred. Is always on to me about when's the next regular wheel restoration coming. Well, the wait is over, Paul. Here it is. So this little guy was living quite happily in my spare parts box. Well, unhappily really, because I robbed the rear four wheels off of it for a project. And I wasn't planning to do anything with this. It needed the new rear hatch, which is an expanse, and you know, that old story, decals. But then, you may or may not have heard me go on about it, I bought a 3D printer. And that acquisition has completely turned the fortunes of this casting around. So let's get crack-a-lackin' and see if we can't use some new world technology to rescue an old world die cast. So this little guy had been the subject of an attempted restoration at some stage of its life. I don't know if a replacement hatch was ever bought for it, but the whole thing pulled apart pretty easily. It looked like the wheels and stuff had only ever been glued back in or pushed on. So I went over to Thingiverse, where a user by the name of Deinhardt has designed and uploaded this file of the replacement hatch. It really looks the part. They look like they've done it in PLA. Hopefully when I print it out in resin, it'll come out a little bit smoother and maybe allow for less cleanup to get it looking how we need it to look. So once you've downloaded that file, we still have to finagle it a bit to make sure it prints out properly. Now, I'm spinning it around here because I want to put some supports on it. You'll see when I swing under the image here, there's some red spots. That's where it's at its weakest. That's where it really needs the supports. Now, the reason I've spun it around and put the supports on underneath is because when you break off all those supports, they do leave little marks sometimes. So let's put them on the side you're never going to see once it's been printed. And once I've done that, boom, 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 we've got 1, 2, 3 ready to go. So then I downloaded this file of the wheel, because you know I need a few, and when I clicked on it, I realised it had been created by none other than Lee from Time Rider's Wee Little Cars. I'll post some links to his YouTube and a link to the file so you can download that wheel. So thanks very much, Lee, for letting me use it and share it with everybody. I used my caliper to measure one of the original wheels, and then I resized the file to make it match. And then I just followed the same procedures as before, creating some supports and then going in and putting in some more where I thought they were necessary. Now here comes one of my favourite parts of 3D printing. How many wheels do you need? 2, 3, 4, 5? Just keep clicking that duplicate button and lay out as many as you want. Once the file's been sliced and saved into a format that suits your 3D printer, we can get into the actual 3D printing. Now this little build plate of hatches and wheels took about 2.5 to 3 hours to complete. I just set it going while I get my beauty sleep, and I need about 26 hours of beauty sleep a night to look as good as I do, viewers. So now I'm just sticking it into the isopropyl, going to give it a wash, then we'll get them off the build plate, and then we'll UV cure them. As part of the learning curve of 3D printing, my practice was to get these off the build plate, stick them in the UV curer, and then break the little, supporting posts off. It's since been shown to me that it's much easier to snap them off before you UV cure them, obviously, but I was always worried about damaging the part. So anyway, from this time on, I snapped the support posts off prior to curing. So fueled with a bit of liquid inspiration, I thought I'd try and design the little hydraulic sleeve as well, which I did, and I had a reasonable amount of success with it. I did have to redesign it 4 or 5 times and test prints till I got one that actually fit, but I got there in the end. So I was having a little test fit of the wheels that Lee designed, and I realised that they're the slightly later version wheels and weren't quite the right type for the Tippax truck. So I put these in a bag, and I'm going to save them for another project that they do fit. And emboldened by the hydraulic sleeve, I thought, well, I'll have a go at designing some wheels, and then I'll have no one to blame but myself. Here I am removing the hatch from its little plastic stand. Twist, twist, twist. As I said before, I've learned now that it's easier to remove these before you dry them out and cure them, which is stating the obvious really, isn't it? Here I am test fitting the hydraulic sleeve. This was the first one I did and it would not fit. I did actually do some damage to the die cast because I tried forcing it in, and we know what happens when you try and force it in. You don't make any friends, so I just kept redesigning it and test printing it until it fit. So hopefully this part of the video doesn't get too boring for you viewers. As you can see, basically about constructing a shape out of cylinders, square, basic shapes, and resizing them and shaping them and lining them up until it looks like what you're trying to make. And I had a lot of fun doing this, and it gave me encouragement to design the next part for another build, which I was super impressed with myself. Anyway, less gibber, more 3D computer aided designing. So using an image off the internet as a guide, I created my own set of decals. I think they look the part. If anyone needs the file so they can print their own, just ask. I'm happy to send them through. Here's my first attempt at the printed wheel next to the original, and as you can see, it's the wrong size, it's no good, so in the bin they went. And I resized them and tried again. It's a little bit better, but yeah, they're not quite right. A little bit more fine tuning. The test fit of the hatch shows that the designer did a perfect job. All the holes lined up like they should. Perfect. Now the wheels, I had to drill out the centres because when I measured them, I'd measured them for the original Lesney axles. I'm using rivet shafts to replace them. So I just drilled them out, made them fit, and stuck them on some cocktail sticks, and I'm going to paint them. So test fitting the rivet shaft, it would go through the hole on the metal part, but the hole on the 3D printed part wasn't quite big enough, so no stress, hand drill, just drilled it out with the same size drill bit I used to fix the wheels, and it all works as it should. Once I test fitted that hatch, it really highlighted how bent this part of the main little refuse collector was, so just tweaked it with the pliers, and no, I didn't break it. Just doing some fine sanding just to try and get some more of the, the little lines, the little, moulding lines on the resin print. And it cleaned up pretty good. That's enough. I went a bit too hard with this wire brush. I should have got, because it's not brass, actually probably did more harm than good, and I had to fix it later, but anyway. Just gluing this screw on so I've got a purchase point for my little alligator clip for when I'm painting it. And speaking of painting, here I am painting. So you remember that time I used enamel paint on my Leyland van and then I clear coated it over the top and it all went crackly and turned to shit. And you thought, oh geez PB, there's a lesson learned. Guess what viewers? No it wasn't, because I did exactly the same with this. I'm using enamel paint here, then I clear coated it. And the second I'd done it I thought, you're an idiot. Anyway, so I stripped it and used acrylic paint and did it properly. Here I am filling in some of the dimples that were left after the wire brush treatment. Like, you know, my skilled finger glove work. So once it dried, I just sanded it all flat, and it definitely made it better. So these are my decals. They're printed on clear paper, but because the refuse collector part is a light colour, it's not going to matter so much. They're not quite as white as they should be, but they're not awful. Belting your sockets with a hammer is the best way to ensure they last a lifetime, viewers. Or just knocking the heads off the shafts of the pop rivets so I can use them as axles. I almost forgot that you have to put the hydraulic sleeve in before you put the axle in, but thankfully I remembered before it was too late. I still had to force it in a little bit. It still wasn't quite perfect. I haven't had to do this for a while. I'm using the Marty Matchbox painted method of drill press with a couple of center punches in it, just to round over the edges of those rivets to hold the wheels on. I'll do the same with the little hinges, and surprisingly I didn't wreck it or scratch the paint, I don't think. Just snap this screw back off so I can put the base on. Using a bit of super duper here because the check's in the mail, Martin there, because it was too shallow to tap and thread on this occasion, and it wasn't that destroyed that it needed it. It kind of looks like the rivet's still in situ. Now, unlike Laz from Lazzy Low Collectibles, I'm not very good at hand detailing paint, but it's got to be done, so I'm having a go, and it's not completely awful. Not completely. I'm dipping cotton bud or Q-tips or whatever you want to call them into the silver paint so I can just dot on the headlights. That way I know they're round and they look like they should. And just like that, as if by magic, with no trouble whatsoever, we're done. So here we are back at the start with our, I was going to say well loved, but it's been well abused, sort of attempted restoration, missing parts, Tippax refuse collector. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to add to that. This is what I started with, and this is what I'm left with now. Ta-da! Looking $1 million now with its fresh set of 3D printed wheels, its 3D printed replacement hatch, some homemade decals, and a little bit of, you know, I'll not say blood. There's a lot of sweat. It's very hot here at the moment, and minimal tears. You see a couple of pock marks on that 3D printed part that I could have corrected with some, you know, filler and a bit more care and attention, but I guess I just wanted to see if it could be done. And I think, you know, I've proved that, you know, it can. 3D printing is a game changer for the hobby, and I'm really pleased with how this one's come out. So thanks for taking the time out of your day to swing by and check out my video. I really appreciate it. If you like what you've seen here, why not check out one of these other videos that have turned up on your screen with any luck. And if you're feeling really daring and bold and would like to subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. Just click on my bald nut there in the middle of your screen, click the bell for alerts, and you too could be swept away to a world of PB magic every time I get round off my butt and upload a video, which is generally once every 2 weeks, sometimes more if you're lucky. Have a great weekend. Thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Bye!